Hi, everybody. I don't have very much of a voice because it was BigBadCon over the last several days. And so I'm going to keep this pretty short, but hopefully I'll have more of a voice on Thursday. Oh my goodness. I was at Big Bad Con, and so on Thursday we had our first virtual Zoom based class of the semester with the splendid Esther Wallace of Mythica and of Tabletop Access for a follow-up conversation about um, accessibility and thinking capaciously about um, basically everything, from kind of what does it mean to be someone who's kind of justice minded and community oriented in their making, to the nature of being a creator of actual play in the space for whom this is a day job, uh, or rather for whom it is separate from their day job, and how to do that intentionally as a disabled creator or a creator who is thinking about disability justice in terms of the number of spoons that somebody has, those sorts of things. It was a really lovely conversation. And according to the students, on their end, the technological glitches were fairly minimal, which is not bad considering we were poolside outdoors in order for maximum safety, and we were recording with my iPad. So that went well. I gave them some stars and wishes at the top of today by saying that for our next Zoom visitors, and we have at least one scheduled, that I would like them to substitute their default Zoom kind of black box with something that represents them. It doesn't have to be their face, but it does need to be kind of some other kind of image. This is the challenge of figuring out how to do virtual visitors. We can do it hybrid logistically. We have a room that is built for sound and video. It can be a little weird in the room that we're set up for because there's a single camera and it's really oriented in theory so that I could be recording the class. And so it'd be trained on me and the backs of everyone else's heads as they're turned around to look at the only screen in the room. There are other rooms that I have taught in that are also wired for sound and then have multiple screens. So then everybody's looking different kinds of ways, but there's still just one camera angle. So in theory, we can do video conferencing, but I have chosen to have just those days be completely remote. In also in part because I continue to mask, and as the semester goes on, that will only continue to be more urgently needed. My epidemiologist friends tell me that wastewater levels, the only reliable record we've got, indicate that masking in rooms that are windowless, and don't have great ventilation, are important. Uh, but yeah, and thank you again for coming, Esther. It was really a gift. I also told them in person something that is probably well known to those who are on Twitter, but we will be having Matthew Mercer join us later in the semester virtually. That is incredibly kind of him and not at all expected. Uh, he is one of the folks in the space who I have some rapport with, but have not talked to like in an official capacity for Polygon or something like that in the ways that many of my guests for class I will often have talked to beforehand. Um, just to kind of clarify for those who might be curious, generally speaking, for folks who are totally new, who I haven't gotten a chance to talk to, I have participants come in, and if we're doing something virtually, they'll arrive a few minutes early for a little bit of briefing and any questions or boundaries that they have that they want to articulate, so that we're not taking up too much time. Not in much the same way that an actual play might have a kind of arrive 15 minutes early to do, checks for levels and things like that. That has altered the syllabus just a little bit, and I'm still tweaking as we figure that part out. Um, the students range from the student who screamed in absolute joy. This is the same student who asked originally if I would ask Matt to join us, to students who are enthusiastic but chill. As of course, this class has a fair number of people for whom TTRPGs in general are fairly new. So they know enough to be excited, but they'll be doing some homework. Um, and so, generally speaking, when I teach Critical Role, I assign some variation of different combinations of things. For my completely new students, since we haven't talked about D&D explicitly a whole lot in class in this particular version of the class, I'll be pointing them towards the Red Nose Day kind of tete-a-tete done with Stephen Colbert from a few years ago, along with a couple of other options for folks who are interested. I've also collected together for the students who have adopted games that Matt has played in actual plays, ways to point them to something like Paranoia or those sorts of things, so that if they want to ask kind of specific system-based questions, they have some reference. And then we'll see, but they got the first of many, we don't treat people as objects, even if that's in a nice way, sort of things, and luckily, they have a lot of, practice in asking people who have come, to class different kinds of questions, and so we confirm that the kinds of questions that they've been asking are appropriate ones to ask. So as long as we don't turn this into Comic-Con, we're good. Um, so yeah, and the only other variation is I have, of course, 2 undergraduate research students who are not in the class, because they have taken the class previously. When a guest is in person, we will often take that guest out to dinner or lunch, and the research students will meet them that way. In this case, the research students will also be part of that Zoom call. So anyway, that was the top of class, and in a similar kind of way, it was a digression from the focus of the day, which was another person that I hugged at Big Bad Con, the lovely Spencer Stark, and the start of Alice is Missing. Alice is Missing is a game that is played with one's cell phone. So for the first time in many of my students' experiences, they were told that they needed to bring that device or a similar texting device to class as part of prep. I've tried to run this across 2 days, and in theory, you can fit it into 2 75-minute classes. The timed portion of Alice is Missing runs for 90 minutes, but it's really, really, really important to have a robust, kind of pre-game discussion of safety tools, and lines and veils, and the X card and the open door policy are ones that are mentioned by the game, as well as the kind of relationship building, character development, and other elements of the game. So, knowing that was highly likely that my announcement might derail a little bit of class, but also wanting to have an experience where we weren't rushed either in the beginning or the end of play, I decided to take 3 days this time. So today was housekeeping stuff, and then we moved into setup and we took our slow, slow, slow time for that, a little so slow that we ran over time and had my very cranky colleague waiting for us literally in the back of the room, arms folded. Um, oops. But what we'll do on Thursday is we will start and we will do roughly the first 65 to 70 minutes of the game so that we'll have another roughly half hour or less on Tuesday. So we'll have a bit of a cliffhanger, but we always do. And this cliffhanger, we'll see how it plays to have a weekend cliffhanger as opposed to a middle of the week cliffhanger. Um, as well as the kind of what does it mean to have the names changed for the entire functional week of game? One student did ask, "Oh, can we put our real names in parentheses?" And I read the rules and told them, in part for immersion purposes, but also for other kinds of reasons. And I did tell them that we would have that the game has a ritual at the end to kind of transform all of the names back to the names that they should be on the game. So we did all of this setup and all the lines and veils, all the different character things. It was also good that I was vamping at the top of class because we have a scenario where, depending on the number of students who are able to come, we're either right at the kind of size of a two table game, or we have three. So we have one student who will be missing class this week, and so, but a couple of people were just, a few minutes late. And so the rest of the class, which many of whom arrived super duper early, had already started to kind of build groups and like, guys, we have to reorganize so that everybody is at a table of at least three. Um, so that student who is not feeling well, and that is totally fine, um, like many other games, will be looking at an actual play. um, that is a little bit challenging when it comes to Alice's Missing. I don't if those of you on the chat have seen Alice's Missing in its actual play form as it's been demoed at conventions and things like that, kind of in virtual ways, you'll know it can be a very challenging game to have as a live stream actual play, because what it is every player's cell phone and camera generally being displayed simultaneously. So really what you're doing is following, kind of locking into one person's phone, because otherwise it's just it's a ticker tape of data. If you are familiar with an actual play that does Alice is Missing in a different way, I would be very curious. And of course, one of the things we'll be talking about in the debrief is the fact that Alice is Missing is in the middle of a production cycle to be adapted into a film. And so there's richness upon richness in future iterations of the class, as we think about this as an example of a kind of transmedia object in that kind of way. Another transmedia note is that this is a game that has its own timer and soundtrack that's freely available on today to count us down as part of the rhythm. So once I left them to do different kinds of things, I did note that the timer was cued not for 90 minutes and counting down from there, but counting down so that it would kind of signal the end of class at the same time that we were wrapping. So that seemed to work pretty well. And it'll be interesting to see if that does any kind of interesting echoing for them. Not obviously no play report yet from Alice is Missing, although there did seem to be a fair amount of, giggles and excitement as they kind of figured out the relationships to one another. Uh, and what was really moving was I heard one group say to me as I was kind of going around, because I serve as the Uber Charlie, the Uber facilitator at least, so that the Charlies at the table who would normally do so. So I come around for rules checks and things like that. And one of the things that was really interesting was one table was like, I love Alice already. I wish she wasn't missing. So immersion is already happening even before the kind of fiction has begun. The last thing they did in class, or if they ran out of time, I asked them to do on their individual phones, is recording the final messages that will end the ritual of the game. So some groups chose to do that by establishing the fiction of the world, like selecting different um, suspect and location cards and talking about those things while people were going in and out of the room. We have quiet, enclosed study areas right near our classroom, which meant they could hop into an isolated room and record their messages really nicely, which is one of the really lovely things about the classroom building, that it has that kind of space. But yeah, so it'll be really hands off for me on Thursday as a general rule, with the exception of if students are using the open door policy or need me for reasons of their own. kind of mental health and safety. I have told them that the open door policy, of course, is that unusually for a class, they can leave at any time if they need to. They can milk out of the rest of the game, and it is totally fine because this is a game that deals with really sensitive materials, and you don't know how, when something's gonna jar you in the wrong way. And so the only thing I've asked is if they're going to leave as opposed to leaving the classroom for the other reasons why they might leave the classroom for bodily needs. But they tell me just so that I know that they're going for sure and can help redistribute time cards and things like that, the things that have to kind of keep the game going. I'm also available to talk if students need to kind of do a little decompress or check in at any point in the game. It hasn't been necessary, but I always try to prepare for the eventuality that this could mean something to somebody in a way that people don't expect. Especially since this is a game that, in terms of its fiction, is the closest to home, because they were all recently high school students, right? They have friends who run away, all of those sorts of things. What was really funny is one thing is definitely treating as a period piece and talking a lot about like 2016 in interesting kinds of ways, which I find absolutely fascinating. So it's an interesting thing to consider the ways in which this game won a huge number of awards in the year 2021, which is the year I first taught it. Really interesting to think about how long I teach it, and how it'll transform as new generations encounter it. Because I think it will hold up for at least as long as the technologies hold up. I have aging in my mind as I come back from BigBadCon and think about the ways that legacy is being built, and thinking about the ways that both generation so yeah, that's BigBadCon and what's happening in the class in the coming weeks. And my initial setup for Alice is Missing, which has been really fabulous. And so that is the rest of this week and into next. And then after our debrief, and we will be bringing the Splendid K-Mix to class, who will be joining us in person. And so I will be back on Thursday and hopefully with more voice to answer questions and talk about how students are self-reporting that as a play experience is going. And until then, I hope you have a happy week. Thanks so much.